Hey, what's going on? My name is Timothy J. Jones, and I am the representative for the NFC South team, the New Orleans Saints. And I, for a few minutes, will be talking to you about the Saints 2024 season. And I got to tell you, there's plenty of places I would rather be than to be thinking about what happened in 2024 with the New Orleans Saints.
This video is powered by BetUS. Use promo code YouTube150 to get your 150% sign up bonus. Start playing today with an exclusive offer. Shout out to BetUS for being the proud sponsor of Roundtable Sports.
I mean, just absolutely a train wreck of a season. I mean, loaded with injuries, disappointments, and a fired coach. I mean, what more you need to know about this team other than the Saints have to turn the page going into 2025. But let's go ahead and backtrack a little bit. The season actually started very positive. They started off 2-0, 90 plus points in the first two games, beating the brakes off Carolina, beating the brakes off the Cowboys, which I think all of us enjoyed. But then all of a sudden, the New Orleans Saints just went on a 7-game losing streak. And in those 7 games, they lost several players on the offensive line. They lost their quarterback along the way, Derek Carr. I mean, it was just blow after blow, bad news after bad news. Like, it was just unbelievable, man. I just never seen anything like that. It was like somebody had a buried chicken bone underneath the Superdome or something. I don't know. It's like somebody put a hex on this team. But after the 7-game losing streak, after they lost to the Carolina Panthers, and I understand how that may seem now that we're actually at the end of the season. Carolina looked pretty good towards the end of the season, but this was before Carolina found themselves. This was before we realized that there was something there with Bryce Young. They got some young talented players, et cetera, et cetera. This was when Carolina, benched Bryce Young, and they had Andy Dalton floating around this thing somewhere. And if it wasn't for an unfortunate event, and I'm glad that he was okay, Andy Dalton got into a car accident, Bryce Young probably wouldn't have been playing. But they end up losing to Carolina, and the Saints fired Dennis Allen. In my opinion, long overdue. Dennis Allen, to me, was one of the main reasons why this team went on a downward spiral. Now, it wasn't just Dennis Allen, but it started with Dennis Allen because, to me, the Saints, as far as what has made them successful over the last 15 years, was the culture. Creating a culture that was positive, confidence, personified, and guys just felt like they had the chance to win. With Dennis Allen, I think guys went into the locker room kind of raising their eyebrows, not too sure about Dennis Allen. I think that Dennis Allen didn't do himself any favors. Going back to the 2023 season, the final game of the season when the Saints were beating up on the Atlanta Falcons, and he apologized to Arthur Smith, who 6 hours later ended up getting fired. And a lot of the team thought that Dennis Allen was going to get fired the next day, but Mickey Loomis comes into the locker room and basically tells the guys in so many words, rather you get on board with Dennis Allen or we're going to ship you out. That's pretty much the language there. But long overdue, the Saints fired Dennis Allen, and Darren Rizzi becomes the interim coach. He becomes the interim coach. The Saints win the next week when in his first start against the Atlanta Falcons. They win again, 2 consecutive games, and it just seems like the morale was a little bit more high. He did some things to try to change the team around a little bit, and it was much needed because he was the complete opposite of what Dennis Allen was. Dennis Allen was more of a passive-aggressive type coach, passive-aggressive style. Darren Rizzi was more of in-your-face, loud, rah-rah, not afraid to question the referees, not afraid to challenge them. It was completely different. But as we know, that there are levels to this. And, he got the interim bump. Guys started to kind of respond to him. But it started to kind of go off the rails again because rah-rah speeches only can get you so far. It has to come down to talent. And the New Orleans Saints, they lost a lot of guys. They lost their number 1 and their number 2 receiver in Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. Chris Olave dealt with a concussion. I was actually at the game when he played against Carolina. He was knocked out cold, had to get stretchered off the field. That was not a good scene at all, especially when you're watching that live. And Rashid Shaheed had to have surgery on his meniscus. So they lost their number one and their number two guy. And then you had a bunch of undrafted guys, a bunch of, free agent guys that you just got off the street that you had on the practice squad masquerading as number one and number two receivers. And then you had Derek Carr, who was average at best, and then he goes down. And now you have to pick between Jake Haener and Spencer Rattler. The Saints went with Spencer Rattler, but Spencer Rattler was not ready. Spencer Rattler, to me, was more of a crowd-pleasing decision. Like, the Saints understood, Saints fans wanted something fresh. They were clamoring for Spencer Rattler. So to me, they kind of subjected themselves to the peer pressure of the Who Dat Nation, and they put him out there. And there was some ups, there was some downs, but he just was not ready. I think that Spencer Rattler should have sat on the bench and should have allowed Jake Haener to play. But when Jake Haener got his opportunity to start, it was even worse. I mean, Jake Haener looked like he didn't belong in the National Football League. But this is what happens when you try to appease a quarterback in Derek Carr. You go out here, you try to get a quarterback room that is non-threatening, but the problem is if that quarterback that you have that you're trying to appease goes down, there's a huge drop-off and you're going to end up losing games. The Saints should have found themselves a veteran quarterback that can sit behind Derek Carr. But I think that it was the Jameis Winston effect of 2023, where Jameis Winston was the most popular quarterback on the team, and the Saints didn't want to go through that. So they were trying to save and protect Derek Carr's ego. And in the process, they didn't have a backup plan, and they had to go with two inexperienced quarterbacks. Thus, the reason why the New Orleans Saints went 5-12, because once again, Derek Carr in a game versus the Giants tries to dive over the top of his own teammate as well as a cornerback, and he brings his hand, extends it out, and ends up breaking his hand and giving himself a concussion when the Saints were actually trying to contend for a playoff spot. And then in comes Spencer Rattler, did a pretty good job, in the game versus the Washington Commanders. The Saints end up going for 2, didn't get it. And then, he played pretty decent against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Huge shout out to BetUS for sponsoring today's show. If you guys go to BetUS, you guys can use a 150% bonus on your first deposit to get a 150% bonus, 125% on your next two. That's up to $2,000. The Super Bowl is here. Chiefs, Eagles, and the early odds is in favor of the Kansas City Chiefs with 1-point favorites with the money line at -127, and the over-under is at 49. If you want to check out BetUS, you can already bet on the Super Bowl. They have a lot of fun prop bets. You can even bet on the coin toss if you wanted to. Are the Chiefs going to win the coin toss, or are the Eagles going to win the coin toss? And if you stay tuned to BetUS, they always come out with the best Super Bowl prop bets on the entire planet. So definitely go check out BetUS at betus.com.pa and using the promo code YouTube150 when you sign up today.
And that was the end of the New Orleans Saints season. And now the New Orleans Saints are looking for a new head coach. All signs indicate that Kellen Moore is more than likely going to be the New Orleans Saints head coach. They can't really say that right now because of the Super Bowl, so they can't disclose that information, but all signs are leading to Kellen Moore being the Saints' next head coach. Kellen Moore kind of checks all the boxes of the modern-day NFL head coach and what teams are looking for. The young 30-something head coach that's smart, intelligent, good football mind, and that can relate to the modern-day player. So he checks all those boxes. Was Kellen Moore the Saints' first choice? Absolutely not. It just seemed like nobody really wanted to coach this team due to the fact of Derek Carr being a quarterback, aging roster, and salary cap issues. It was a hard job to sell to somebody that's going into their first opportunity, because we know that the NFL world is looking at those coaches, and they're not concerned about what the salary cap of a team looks like or the quarterback situation. They're only going to judge you based on wins and losses. So these coaches, they had to pick their spots very, very carefully. There were a couple guys that didn't even interview for the job, didn't even waste their time. But the Saints end up finding Kellen Moore. Could this work out? Only time will tell. And we'll see once the ink is dry on the contract. As far as the New Orleans Saints and what they need, I mean, take your pick. Quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, offensive lineman, defensive lineman, linebacker, cornerback, safety. Heck, I wasn't even very impressed with the special teams when it comes to the kicker and punter. This team needs pretty much everything. But if I can really just focus on the draft and kind of come up with maybe some guys that can actually help this team in the first couple of rounds, I would have to say they have to work on the interior line. I mean, the Saints couldn't stop the run to save their mama life. I'm serious. The run defense was god awful. And I just think that you need some help on the interior. So Mason Graham, to me, the defensive tackle coming out of Michigan, would fill that void. He's a big guy. He's a really good run stopper. And I like Brian Brzee a lot on the interior, but he's more of that pass rush type, defensive tackle. Hasn't really been fine-tuned yet as a run defender, stopping the run. I think that will come with time and maybe some development with some of these new coaches that are going to come in to the New Orleans Saints organization. So Mason Graham would be my first pick. Another guy that I feel like would help the New Orleans Saints if, the Saints decide that they want to move on from Derek Carr and they allow Spencer Rattler to be their starter. To me, I think that the best friend of a young quarterback is a good defense and a running game. And I think that will help Spencer Rattler reach his full potential and don't have to feel like everything is on his shoulders. You have Alvin Kamara. Maybe you align Alvin Kamara with a young running back and you fix his offensive line. So if you don't get Mason Graham, how about going after Will Campbell, the offensive lineman out of LSU, to be able to fix your offensive line? That way you can run the football with Alvin and another running back and be able to alleviate some of the pressures off of a Spencer Rattler. Those are the type of things that I think the Saints need to look at in the first round. Now, I know there's been talk about the Saints possibly going after Jackson Dart, the quarterback out of Ole Miss. He really flashed at the Senior Bowl. A lot of people feel like there's not that much of separation between him, Cam Ward, and Shadur Sanders. So if a team ends up getting Jackson Dart, it might be a steal in the draft. And if he is there in the second round, I wouldn't be objective to the Saints selecting Jackson Dart. I mean, I like Spencer Rattler, but you're talking about a new head coach, new coaches that are coming in that are going to be a supporting cast. He doesn't have a rapport with Spencer Rattler. And we heard the reports about Kellen Moore not being too fond of the Saints quarterback room. And, there were some reports to debunk that, saying that he came around. But I'm just saying, like, this is your first opportunity at being a head coach. I don't know if you are going to put your head coaching life in the hands of somebody that you may have not selected. I think you will feel more comfortable in getting somebody that is your guy. That way, if it doesn't pan out, that is a reflection of you. But the good thing for Spencer Rattler is he's only one season in. So he hasn't developed any type of habits that can't be broken. So if he decides, I'm talking Kellen Moore, to roll with Spencer Rattler, then I think that the offensive line needs to be the focal point in the first round. You need to get yourself a wide receiver. That I feel like you can get in the second round. Somebody like Trey Harris out of Ole Miss, big physical guy, about 6'3", 212 pounds. The Saints have been missing a wide receiver like this for a very long time, since Michael Thomas was on the team. A big body receiver that can get yards after the catch, can get those tough yardage, can be that third down go-to guy when Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave are out there just running Chris routes. You need that big physical guy, and I think that's what the Saints need to focus on, getting that to be able to complement what they already have in the wide receiver room. So those are some of the things that I feel like the Saints can do in order to for them to be able to become a much better version of themselves in 2025. Look, it's going to be an uphill battle. I think that Saints fans, the objective Saints fans, the logical Saints fans, they understand that this is going to be a work in progress. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither will the Saints team. But I think that Saints fans are going to have to practice some patience and understand that there are going to be some lows before there can be some highs. So I think that the New Orleans Saints 2025 season could be the start of something special, but they got to be able to make some tough decisions. That includes getting rid of Derek Carr. You know, I don't want to just say it like that, but moving on from him. All right, that sounds much better. Moving on from Derek Carr and fixing his offensive line to make it a little bit more friendly for a young, inexperienced quarterback. If you decide that you want to have Spencer Rattler as your starter or Jackson Dart as your starter, you got to be able to accompany him with a really good offensive line and running game. But thank you so much for checking out this video. I really do appreciate it. Once again, my name is Timothy J. Jones, the representative for the NFC South team, the New Orleans Saints. Until next time, all I got to say is, who dat?
This video is powered by BetUS. Use promo code YouTube150 to get your 150% sign-up bonus. Start playing today with an exclusive offer. Shout out to BetUS for being the proud sponsor of Roundtable Sports.